Hello and welcome to From the BLN, the Burnley podcast. Quite a bumper episode this week. We've got some contract news. We've got some looking back at a win over Cardiff, which extends our unbeaten run and gives us another 3 points and puts us nicely in the picture at the top of the championship table. And we'll look ahead to the visit of Luton Town tomorrow to Turf Moor for a very rare 3 p.m. Saturday kickoff. I'm Andrew Greaves, alongside me Chris Borden, Paul Woodhouse, and our midfield general back in. We're going to have to offer him a contract, I think, at some point. Mr. Darren Bentley. Daz, how are we, mate?
Very good, thanks. Not sure about midfield general. A sweeper might be about a mile a miss at the minute.
You move back the older you get, don't you? That's what they keep saying. You keep moving back, so we're all going to become goalkeepers at some point. Yeah. Let's start with some good news. Connor Roberts has signed a new 2-year deal with an extra year option. I think it's what it's termed as. He's got to say he looks happy as Larry to be signing a new deal, and said that this is a very special football club with special fans. I think the fans have quite an interesting relationship with Roberts. I have to admit, I've never really taken to him. But Chris, tell me I'm wrong. Tell me it's just me being miserable. Connor Roberts, a good signing, isn't it? Let's be honest. A fabulous bit of business getting him signed up for another 2 years.
Well, absolutely, yeah. Because again, he's an international footballer with major tournament experience. He's played in the Premier League. He was in the Team of the Year a couple of years ago in the Championship winning season, and I think there was. I mean, I had my doubts about him. You look back at that season he signed, and he'd a couple of injury problems, and I don't think he was. He took his time to sort of get to the speed of the Premier League, and and obviously, he has this terrific role under Vincent Kompany. It's sort of inverted fullback coming into the midfield rather than sort of bombing on as he had done for Wales. And, as you said, back end of last year, the second half of last year, he's shipped off to Leeds United on loan. And I think we all thought we'd probably seen the end of Connor Roberts. His missus seemed to be settled over there. They enjoyed the time there by all accounts. And, Vitinho had an admirable spell, hadn't he, in his absence. And they say, who knew we'd sell Vitinho for such a profit, and Connor Roberts would be back in favour.
Yeah, and Daz, I mean, I think you made the point just off before we kind of came back on, before we started recording, that Roberts is one of them players that it's going to cost you a lot to replace a player like Roberts, isn't it? I mean, he is, a seasoned Premier League player. I mentioned the fact that I thought it was a mistake sending him out on loan to Leeds last year. I like Vitinho, but Roberts gives you a bit of something, doesn't he? And Chris mentioned that kind of inverted full-back role when he just tucks into midfield, and he is quite integral to the way we play. I think he's only missed 5 games this season as we've gone on this ridiculous defensive run.
He's an asset for us. I'm a big fan of Roberts. I think he's one of these players that kind of sits in the gap between Championship and Premier League. He's probably not quite good enough for the top level, but I think he's great at this level, and I think we miss him when he's not in the team. We miss his energy levels. We know he's not always the bomber on, but we miss a couple of goals a season, 3 or 4 goals a season from him. And you're right, and we said this before the pod. It makes perfect sense to me, that deal. If Connor Roberts leaves, you're going to have to spend 15 million quid, 20 million, whatever it might be, to, if we get promoted, probably even more, to get right back in there. And you've got Son in the wings now, who's learning his trade nicely, and I think it makes perfect sense for me. I think it's a great move for Burnley. I think it's a great signing. I'm a fan. I like him.
Woody, I mean, you're quite a big fan of shithousing. He's quite a shithouse at times, isn't he? That's the, fairest thing to, to describe him as. And that sometimes is what winds me up when he gets involved early in games, and perhaps, I see his concentration levels. But we were a bit devoid of those kind of players last season, weren't we? That kind of somebody who don't mind ruffling feathers. Are you a fan of Connor Roberts?
Yes, all told. Yeah, I think it's a good point that it's not just shithousing for shithousing's sake. It's just that little bit of nous. He's been around the block a couple of times. He knows how to see out a game. He knows when to wind people up, and rarely does he go beyond the pale, apart from his tash, which has bushed out quite nicely this past week, hasn't it? But I think he's also one of those players, I think, that when Roberts plays well, the side has played well. Yeah. He doesn't play well in isolation. He plays well alongside the team. And we know he's not the quickest, but he seems to have accommodated for that as he's moved more into this role of this inverted fullback. But yeah, I mean, I can imagine he's a great lad to have around the dressing room. And all told, I think it'd be ridiculous to get rid of him, and it'd be another good 2 years. Hopefully,
it's someone you can hang your hat on most weeks, isn't it? That's the thing.
Yeah.
And Chris, we kind of hope perhaps that this is the first of a couple of contract renewals. We're kind of getting to that stage of the season, aren't we, where the club like to kind of throw out these contract renewals, and I think Scott Parker said that him and Egan Riley and Brownhill, who were all out of contract or were out of contract this summer, discussions were ongoing. We've often been critical of the club not signing players up, and obviously, some fairly big names were able to leave, without very much coming back our way. I mean, it is a kind of, we've left it a little bit late in the day, but it is a sign that actually, we perhaps have that thought process that, what, we're going to have to spend money if we don't keep these assets, in the squad, aren't we?
It's all one big dance, isn't it? Everyone says, "Oh, why haven't you signed them all on contracts?" And you look at Liverpool, the top of the Premier League, and arguably the three best players are out of contract, and they probably won't lose them all, but on paper they could lose all three for nothing. In this day and age, footballers, want to have let us see what's on the on the other side of the road, don't they? Really, what might I get offered as a free agent in terms of signing on fees, in terms of a wage? When someone isn't having to pay 10, 15 million quid for me, it's a nice earner, isn't it? If you can get it, so you're not surprised. I think we can all see Brownie loves the place. He's almost an adopted. Adopted Burnley-ite, isn't he? As such, his brother's been playing at Padiham for a while. Yeah. He's a. I know he's from Warrington initially, but he spent enough time in this area now. He bleeds claret and blue. I think it's fair to say with Brownie. So I wouldn't be surprised if someone like Celtic were to come in and offer him Champions League football. I wouldn't be surprised if he were to jump at that prospect, to be honest. But likewise, if Burnley are promoted, I can see him staying put as well. But Egan Riley's a different one. Is he? He's under 24. You get a compensation package for him. God knows what you get in this day and age. I don't know what defender with basically one season's championship experience. What sort of fee you'd be looking at? You'd stick a pin on the donkey and pick a price out for that. Honestly, don't know, but the club would obviously love to keep those two, but you never know what sort of offers that their agents are attracting and whether their heads might be turned.
Yeah, and Daz, I mean, as Chris says, it is a bit of a dance. I mean, Egan Riley's a funny one, isn't it? Because he's had an exceptional season since coming in, but you kind of wonder whether the bigger clubs, i.e. kind of established Premier League clubs, perhaps almost want another year out of him. He's not been tested at Premier League level, didn't play much for, played I think one Champions League game for City and a couple of League Cup ties. There is a big step in it, as we found, from the Championship to the Premier League. Obviously, him being out of contract broadens his options and lessens ours. But do you see clubs, actively pursuing Egan Riley in a kind of he's ready for first team football at a higher level? Or is he, if you were his agent, saying, look, let's get this Burnley deal because 6 months in the Premier League, we could be in an even better position come next January?
You hit the nail on the head for me with the last comment you made. Agents, I've been in this industry long enough to know agents are in the players' ears all the time. Agents' paydays are all about moving players on. And a player can be as settled as he wants, but if an agent gets a sniff of a deal somewhere else, he'll be in his players' ear telling him that he can do better, he can earn more, he can earn it quicker. Whether that always works out, because sometimes these players move on and then they just sink into a squad and don't become a regular first teamer. And that's a dilemma always for a player. But in this day and age, money wins a lot of the time, and agents will have a big play in that. You know, a lot of Burnley players who are interesting other parties, you know, there will probably have been contacts already through agents or even direct phone calls. But one thing I would say about Burnley, in Matt Williams, they've got an absolutely organizer and communicator and negotiator. You know, Matt won't suffer any fools gladly, and if there's a deal to be done early, as was with Connor Roberts, or as a deal to be done in the summer with whoever it might be, he'll be trying to tie people down, and he'll know exactly where people sit now. There is no one better than Matt in the industry for this kind of thing, so we're in safe hands there for me.
Yeah, and Woody, that's we've talked about Matt a few times, haven't we, on this podcast? And from the snippets you see on the various documentaries that we've got and the little series, I mean, we are quite lucky. We've been very critical of ALK and Alan Pace and you know the kind of structures that they brought in and dismantled and then brought in again and dismantled. But Matt Williams as that negotiator, you'd kind of think that, you know, we've seen how persuasive he is. You know, I mean, we managed to get Marcus Edwards despite, you know, offering a toffee apple and a, you know, 50p Freddo bar compared to people who were offering 3 or 4 times more. Yes, there's the Scott Parker factor, but you kind of think that Williams and Parker are almost a bit of a, you know, real kind of draw for players, either players who are already here or when we're going out and trying to attract players to come in, especially if we're going to be playing Premier League football next season.
Are Freddo's genuinely 50p these days?
There's something like that, mate. Honestly. Thatcher's Britain, pal.
I know, I've been away a while, haven't I? Hey, I remember when they were 5p. Anyway, no, I mean, you're right. He's almost the ace in the hole. It seemed through those documentaries that he was holding a lot of stuff together, arguably more stuff together than he probably should have been in that role. But it's like that. It seems to be, from me as an outsider anyway, that he's obviously holding all that together. And then the Parker piece as well, it's just having those people who know something about football, who are football people. That's the difference, isn't it? And at least it seems that they've had a little bit of sense to lean on those people sufficiently.
Yeah. Let's move on from Connor Roberts' contract news. Let's look back, Chris, at Tuesday night. I mean, you know, the on paper 2-1 win in the Welsh capital gets us within 2 points of Sheffield United. Quite a good first half. We were purring at times in that first half. A couple of good goals. Steve with his tapping of the season contender, as he dubbed it on Instagram. And we'll perhaps come on to Jadon Anthony's cross for that particular goal in a second. But a real game of two halves, weren't it? I mean, Cardiff, who looked like a pub team at times, got us a little bit worried, didn't they? I mean, you know, we conceded a goal for the first time since, you know, God knows when. And it got very nervy towards the end, didn't it? It was, you know, far too uncomfortable second half.
Very much so, very much so. Well, they did what I think it's almost, I mean, it's a different side now, but from 2 years ago, it's like the Sheffield United template. You know, Burnley don't like it up them sort of thing. I think there's a lot of teams that have shown us an awful lot of respect and not thrown the kitchen sink at us. You know, again, I remember going back to a home game against Coventry. They've got, you know, it's a different manager when we go there, and you know, towards the end of the season with Frank Lampard. But that Ellis Sims on the bench, you know, is a big unit, and I think he came on in the dying embers of that game, and you're thinking like, just throw him on, you know, put the cat among the pigeons and upset Burnley physically, because you know you look at the size of Egan Riley, and you know, Steve has done well with the physical aspect of things. He's the all-round centre half for me. He's got a turn of pace. He's good in possession, and he's decent in the air. But you know, that sort of physicality can rattle him, and Cardiff did it. The manager sort of at 2-0 down, he's obviously thought, sod this, I'm just gonna, so we're just gonna have a go at it. We're gonna go out with all guns blazing, and we ended up with all manner of sort of misfits and Premier League has-beens and never-weres, and had a proper crack at it in the end. You're thinking, I mean, the wage bill. I think there was a piece during the week about wage bills, and people surprised at how high Cardiff's wage bill in relation to their performance. But then you see, Al Ghazi and Robinson, Ramsey, people like that, and Callum Chambers, and they've got some good players there. And they threw caution to the wind, and they should have got a point. It would have been, to me, it wouldn't have been deserved over the 90 minutes, but they should have got a point. Like I say, for that first 45 minutes and that spell after half time, I really enjoyed some of Burnley's football at time. I thought, we said before that Edwards will occupy 2 and 3 defence, and it'll free up Anthony, Hannibal, Perez on that left-hand side. The opening goal is just a delight to watch. The overload and great ball in from Hannibal, who was excellent. If you can add in an ability to create on top of his technical ability and his graft, he is a proper player. It was. I mean, over the piece, it was far more nervy than it should have been. But I was reasonably happy. You've seen all sort of sides of Burnley, good attacking football and a bit of grit to hold on in the end.
Yeah, and Daz, I mean, we've talked on this podcast a few times that kind of we wouldn't mind conceding a goal because it sometimes just resets focus. It kind of, I don't think anyone thought it would come away at Cardiff, given how bad they've been this season and the position they're occupying. But yes, the record as, the clean sheet run has come to an end. Yes, JJ Watt is sat somewhere in Wisconsin with a cigar and his slippers on, knowing he's not going to have to play for the Bengals next year. But there's nothing wrong, is there, really, with us conceding that goal? I know I think you said, I never want to concede again, and, we're proud of that record. We are proud of it. But it might just refocus perhaps minds a little bit that, what, teams will come and try and bully us.
In some ways, the sideshow's over now. It's all about the main event now, isn't it? I mean, because that's dominated the headlines for so long. And just the last word on that 12-game clean sheets was that how remarkable it is. Cardiff, aside at the bottom of the league, put Burnley under so much pressure. This league is so unpredictable. To keep 12 clean sheets in this league was astonishing. But it's gone now. The sideshow's gone and we can move forward. And at the other end of the pitch, like Chris, I was delighted with the first half. We got a little bit nervy towards the end. But we're a side at the minute that's just finding a way somehow, aren't we? We forget Preston game, because the Preston game was the reserve team chucked out to sort of get out the cup in some ways. But we're finding a way. And I saw a stat from Phil Bird, 20 goal scorers this season now, which is a record for this club. 20 goal scorers. I missed 5 of those are no longer with us, and they came in the first few weeks of the season when we were scoring for fun. But 20 goal scorers, and it's easy not to be laughed at. And Estev's in with his first one. It's been long overdue. Because every time we get a corner, I think he should be at the back stick heading one in. So there's not a lot to fault them for. I mean, they won the game. They dug deep. They won the game. They move on. I think Saturday will be an equally tough game because the expectation levels are poured back on Burnley now at Turf Moor against a side who'll probably sit in. And we know what sides are sitting against Burnley like. But yeah, I couldn't really. I went to bed happy that night. I couldn't really fault it. It was a bit nervy towards the end, but I never felt like they were going to score that second goal. I always thought we would score more than the two. That was the big surprise, that we didn't score more.
Yeah, and Woody, I mean, Chris mentioned the first goal being superb. I mean, I've watched Jadon Anthony's cross, God knows how many times for Zian Fleming at the back post, who just nods it back across goal for Estev to tap home. I mean, we've talked about Jadon Anthony and how good he is. I mean, that is for me one of the crosses of the season. I mean, the kind of the curl on it and the speed and everything about it is just perfect. Perhaps not for Fleming to trouble the goalkeeper, but Fleming has that sense of, you know what, actually all I need to do is just steer this somewhere in the middle, and if there's someone there, we're two up. I mean, we are lucky, aren't we, that we've, you know, again, picked out these players that we want to be off his seats. That was one of them moments where you go, wow, what a cross that is.
Since his debut against Blackburn, and he put that ball across for Foster, he very rarely screws up his final ball. 9 times out of 10, it has a purpose, and he's finding a man. And you're right, you know, his crossing ability, his first touch, invariably is exquisite as well. If he could actually finish, and you know, he'd be some player. And I'm just reading here about all players. He has the lowest percentage of defeats for any player who has started more than 20 home games in Championship history, which is 3%. So basically, if he's starting for you, you invariably you're not going to be losing. So he's putting some kind of shift, and he's either doing something up top or he's tracking back and he's working, and that's including Bournemouth and Leeds as well as Burnley. So he's performed well in the Championship as Jayden Anthony.
Tell you what, Woody, I thought Chris was the man with the stats, but you've pulled an absolute pearl right there.
That is a pearl of that, isn't it?
I know. He's probably AI just hallucinating. So you never know.
I will say he's crossing. I think he's crossing. That is one aspect of his game that he can improve on as well. I think there's a lot of times, particularly when he was on the right hand side, he puts balls in areas. Rather, you know, I'd like to see him sort of, you know, really pick his head up and pick people out at times. But I say I'm a fan. I've said from the offset, there's a player there, and you can see he's sort of growing in confidence and big. You know, he's a big talent. You see, you ally that defensive diligence with his ability going forward, and I think you've got a super footballer on your hands.
Well, a mate of mine who has a Liam, who won't mind me mentioning him, who insists, and he pulls his hair out he doesn't have any hair, but he would pull it out of the alley neck. That if you give Jayden Anthony a decision, if you give him an option, he chooses the wrong one. If he's instantaneous and he just plays the ball as he sees it, he's world class. You know, I'm not probably maybe not world class, but he's class.
There's a lot of players like that, isn't there? I always thought Theo Walcott used to be a bit like that. You give Theo Walcott time, and if he's 1-on-1, he's a goalkeeper. You let him sweep a ball first time, and he's.
But I mean,
he's
the old Chrissy Waddle word. Well, Chrissy Waddle said he's got no football brain, didn't he?
Who, Walcott?
Walcott, yeah.
Yeah.
I think he was probably
one of you
correct.
two lads will probably have the figure in front of you. I don't know how many assists he's made this season, Jayden Anthony, but we'd be lost without him.
He was top, wasn't he, with 4 at one. I think he's had a couple since then as well.
Yeah. And we've got Luton Town, Daz, on tomorrow, Saturday, as you're listening to this on a Friday. You talked about that expectation. You know, I joked beforehand, you know, it should be a 5-0, but we'll probably end up as a 0-0. It is a strange, unpredictable division in terms of, at some point, these banana skins get thrown your way. We've seen it already with, you know, Sunderland losing to teams who you wouldn't expect them to lose to, Sheffield United dropping points in games you'd perhaps expect them to win a bit earlier in the season. Now that sideshow of the clean sheet record's over, you want us to kind of just go into that turbocharge now, don't you, in terms of, look, we don't have to necessarily defend that goal with our entire existence to keep this record going. We want to be able to kind of, you know, defend from the front and be on the front foot against a team like Luton, who absolutely devoid of confidence, look like they're going to get a, consecutive relegation after falling out of the Premier League last season. Do you think that pressure that we get in home games, where the crowds perhaps aren't as patient, shall we say, is that something that as a manager you can get your players to kind of zone out and go for that kind of, brilliant free-flowing football like we've seen? Or do you expect it to be a bit more mired in the same ways we've seen a lot of home games go this season?
I think it'll always be there, but I think you would hope that as these younger players play more games of this ilk, that they just learn to settle and believe in themselves a little bit more. We know we've got goals in us most weeks. I know we've had a high percentage of 0-0s this season, and God knows where we'd be. We'd turned half of those into wins. But most weeks we have a goal in us, don't we? I think we can all agree probably Fleming's he's always not an ideal number 9. He's a better number 9 than Foster will ever be. So at the minute, he has to be the man who plays there, and we play off him. And we get Brownhill, who chips in again in midweek with another goal. He can chip in 20 goals. Like we said, we've always got those goals in the side. And I think now it can almost be we'll score one more than you. Doesn't matter if they score, we'll score one more than you. I want to see Burnley really on the front foot on Saturday, backing up midweek when, putting the pressure really on the top two, because they're going to have to keep that pressure on, because I don't think the top two are going to falter. I think those 3 might well pull away. Sunderland know I've closed it a little bit again, but I still think those top 3 will pull away. So you've got to keep your foot to the floor, and if we back it up on Saturday, who knows, one of them slips up, you could be in there.
Yeah, and Woody, I mean, Leeds don't play until Monday again. Sky Sports Leeds channel getting its weekly airing. But Dazzy's right. I mean, Sheffield United are going to be looking over their shoulder. The gap's only 2 points. We've still got to play them at Turf Moor. That 2 point, you've basically got to match them, haven't you? 2 points. Keep it within 2 points. Beat them at Turf Moor. Yep. And then keep matching them stride for stride after that. We've mentioned the fact that they've got Rovers on the last game of the season, which Rovers will be absolutely torn if they're kind of, anywhere near the playoff picture, but I think they'll be well gone by then. It needs to now be that kind of, look, you get X amount of shots between now and the end of the season to turn this into a really good season and get that promotion that, the cup exit is kind of set us up for. Are you expecting that kind of approach from Parker? Or do you think he'll be a bit more pragmatic, a bit more cautious? Because he's a bit of a strange manager, isn't he? He kind of... We play some brilliant football, but there's sometimes a few decisions when it comes to freshening it up where we perhaps just leave it a little bit too late. Is he still trying to find his feet in this position? Because these, unlike his previous 2 promotions from this division, again, it's a different blueprint, isn't it?
It is. It's a weird one, because you see little flashes, and some of them are slightly longer than others in particular games, where we just tear sides apart, and literally nobody can live with us. But it's a very short flash in the pan, and we either score or we go back into our shell, irrespective of whether we score or not. Almost like we could have seen the game out quite comfortably on Tuesday night if we'd have got a penalty. That little period where Edwards had his little purple patch and they couldn't live with us again, and then we just seemed to retreat and step back off that, instead of pushing on. And I get kind of why we do it a little bit, and we're very, very good at doing it, obviously, all season. But against the likes of Luton, like Dazzy's saying, you'd like us to be on the front foot. They've lost 13 of the last 14 away. They've the worst away record in the division, and that's why they sat rock bottom.
Again, he's pulling another one out.
I know, you're welcome. I know, exactly.
He loves it, doesn't he? Absolutely loves it.
It's all I've got. literally all I've got.
Where's your brown sheepskin, Woody?
Upstairs. Yeah. But you'd like to see us take him to task again, like we did at Kenilworth Road, and I kind of half say this every other week, but I think we can and we should do. And to your point, you'd like to see from here on in, it's basically, we know that there's that 6-pointer against Sheffield United coming up, and that's your season. It could very well be your season. And, just go on and get on his front foot, and let's go out and take it there. And let's make a decent fist of it.
Yeah, and Chris, are you surprised at how bad Luton have been? I mean, we kind of damaged them on the opening day of the season beyond repair, and a change of manager has brought about a win. Matt Bloomfield, first win last weekend at the 9th attempt. 5 defeats, 3 draws. There you go, Daz. Couple of stats there for you off Wikipedia. Nowhere near as impressive as Woody's. I mean, it doesn't. yes, they lost a lot of players, and Ross Barkley obviously being one of their kind of big ones last season. But are you surprised at how badly things went for Luton when they dropped down into Championship? I mean, us and Sheffield United kind of steadied the ship early doors and have been at the right end of the table.
Well, I think we were shocked because I think obviously Luton finished above Sheffield and Burnley last season. But again, you take Barkley and Andros Townsend out of that side. But Barkley was the beating heart of that side, and the Townsend very often added a bit of final flourish onto that. But thing is that it's obviously Burnley and Sheffield have bounced around the Premier League and the Championship for a few years now. Luton have had that other route where they've sort of arrived into the Championship. They've absolutely exceeded expectations by getting into the playoffs and getting promoted in the process. They don't have the depth of squad,
no,
and that's been shown up. And I think everyone looked at Rob Edwards was magnificent in winning promotion and everything around the club with the what's the name of the centre half who had the heart issues. I was losing my mind for a minute there.
Captain.
The way he handled that situation, he just came out, thoroughly impressive individual. But he just looked like a rabbit in headlights at times. He had no answer to what was going on this season, and they're paying the price as the result. And it looks like they're heading back from whence they came. And actually, it was a surprise for the manager to move. You look at Wickham are absolutely flying. They look like they're going to be in the Championship for the first time. To join a Luton side, I mean, it's a bigger club historically, but it seemed a strange one for me at the time. You had a job on to keep Luton up, and why you would abandon your project, 75% of the way through or whatever. It was an odd one, but if we play with any sort of tempo, any sort of zip to our play, keeping the football. Cleverly working overloads and trying to create openings through either Edwards or Anthony, and I think we'll be absolutely fine. They're nowhere near the threat they were when they last came to Turf Moor and bullied James Trafford in the last few moments. So yeah, I'd expect 3 points, but I say you never know. With all this season.
Yeah, definitely. Excellent. Well, let's leave it there. Thank you very much, Daz, Chris and Woody. We'll be back on Monday with a debrief from that Luton Town game. A very rare 3 p.m. kickoff, as we said right at the top of the show. So wherever you're watching the Burnley game, whichever pub you're going in pre and post match, enjoy your pints, enjoy your breakfasts. Woody over in Cleveland and the rest of the US Clarets. Enjoy the rest of your week. Enjoy your weekend. We'll see you on Monday. And until then, up the Clarets.
How many times do I have to tell you? Stop moaning!
Not going anywhere.